Good evening, everyone. Let me share something that's been haunting the halls of Blackwood Elementary for over a century. You know those old mining towns where history seeps into every crack and crevice? Well, this story takes place in one of those forgotten places. The school sits like a lonely sentinel atop what used to be mine number 7, where the earth swallowed 23 children whole back in 1892. They say the collapse happened during a lesson, just an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. The children were learning about proper manners and etiquette of all things. But here's where it gets strange. About 10 years ago, teachers started noticing something unusual. A girl, always in the back row wearing a dust-covered pinafore that looks like it's straight from another century. Her eyes, they say they're like looking into empty mine shafts. No light reflects in them, no life. The janitors clean the blackboards every evening, but sometimes in certain classrooms the lessons reappear overnight, written in what looks suspiciously like coal dust. And that's when the whispers start. That's when children start bringing home black-stained handkerchiefs, their little coughs echoing through the corridors. Mrs. Henderson, she's been teaching there for 30 years. She told me something that still makes my skin crawl. The girl, she said, she only chooses the most well-mannered students. The ones who always say please and thank you. The ones who never interrupt. The perfect students. Last month, little Sarah Matthews, straight A's, perfect attendance, always helping others, started coughing. They found coal dust on her desk every morning, no matter how many times they cleaned it. 3 days later, she didn't come to school anymore. The really unsettling part? When they checked the attendance records from 1892, there she was, the girl in the pinafore. Elizabeth Cole, daughter of the mine owner. They say she was teaching the other children manners when the collapse happened. And now they say she's still teaching. So if you're ever in Blackwood Elementary and you see a girl in an old-fashioned pinafore sitting in the back row, whatever you do, don't be too polite. Sometimes good manners can be deadly. Picture this, there's always that one new kid at school who's a little different. But trust me, nothing could have prepared us for Yuki. When she first transferred to our class in the middle of winter, something felt off. Maybe it was those eyes, pitch black like 2 drops of ink suspended in paper. Or maybe it was how she'd drift between desks during breaks, always asking to borrow pens with this haunting little hum. At first, we thought nothing of it. New school, trying to make friends, right? But then the whispers started. Mika's favorite fountain pen went dry overnight. She swore it was full the day before. Then Kenji's entire collection of calligraphy supplies. Empty, not a drop left. But the pens, that was just the beginning. The nightmares came next. Students would wake up in cold sweats, describing the same thing. A dark figure hovering over them, its mouth pressed against their eyelids, drinking something. The weird part? Everyone who had these dreams found their pens bone dry the next morning. That's when old Mr. Tanaka, the school janitor, told us the story. 30 years ago, there was an accident at the old Sakura calligraphy school that used to stand where our school is now. A student, obsessed with perfecting her writing, stayed late one night. They found her the next morning drowned in a vat of ink. But here's where it gets truly terrifying. Last week, they found Mika in the library, mechanically writing page after page. Her eyes were blank, hands moving like they belonged to someone else. The pages, suicide notes. Hundreds of them. Each character perfect, each stroke flawless, written in a style that went out of fashion 3 decades ago. And Yuki? She just stands there, watching, that same gentle hum floating through the air, while black tears drip from those pitch-dark eyes. They say she's still thirsty, still searching for the perfect words to complete her final masterpiece. And if you bring a fountain pen to school, well, just remember, some thirsts can never be quenched. So next time you're writing late at night and you hear that soft humming behind you, whatever you do, don't look back, because Yuki isn't just collecting ink anymore. She's collecting souls, one perfectly written character at a time. Let me tell you about a game, but fair warning, it's not the kind you want to play. In fact, I probably shouldn't even be sharing this, but since you're here, there's this old abandoned schoolhouse on the edge of town. You know the type, broken windows, peeling paint, the kind of place that makes your skin crawl even in broad daylight. But it's what's behind the building that really gets people talking. A single swing set, just one swing, rusted and ancient, creaking back and forth in the midnight breeze. Now the local kids have been passing down this story for generations. They say there's a game you can play there, but it comes with strict rules. Rules that exist for a very good reason. If you're brave or foolish enough to sit on that swing at midnight, you're supposed to count its swings out loud. 1, 2, 3. The story goes that on the 13th swing, someone will join you. You won't see them, but you'll feel them. The air will get colder, and the hairs on the back of your neck will stand up. First rule, don't look at it. Second rule, don't stop counting. Even if your voice shakes, even if you're terrified, keep those numbers coming. And the third rule, perhaps the most important, don't ask its name. Don't speak to it at all. Just keep counting. Simple rules, right? That's what Tommy Mitchell thought too. Tommy was always the daredevil type, always trying to prove something. Last summer, he decided to play the swing game. He broke all 3 rules. They found him the next morning as the sun was rising. He was still there on the swing, moving back and forth, so gently you'd think someone was pushing him. His face, well, I won't describe his face. But what really got to people, what made even the police officers shudder, were the tiny handprints. Perfect little handprints pressed deep into his shoulders, like something small and strong had gripped him and never let go. You know what's really strange, though? They say if you listen carefully on quiet nights, you can still hear counting coming from behind that old schoolhouse. But it's not Tommy's voice anymore, and it never stops at 13. So if you ever find yourself near an abandoned schoolhouse with a lonely swing, just keep walking. Some games aren't meant to be played.
Listen closely, because I'm about to tell you about one of the most chilling legends to ever haunt the halls of a boarding school. The story of the Hollow Girl of Ravenswood Academy. Ravenswood isn't your typical prestigious boarding school. Sure, during the day, it's all polished wood floors and ivy-covered walls. But when night falls, when the last bell has rung and the corridors grow quiet, that's when you might hear it. The knocking. It started decades ago, back when the academy was stricter, more isolated. Eleanor Matthews was a freshman then. Bright, ambitious, but desperately lonely. She became an easy target for a group of girls who'd made cruelty their favorite pastime. One October evening, during what was supposed to be a harmless initiation prank, they convinced Eleanor that she needed to hide in one of the school's secret passages, remnants from when the building was a station on the Underground Railroad. They told her it would only be for an hour, just long enough to prove she was worthy of their friendship. But something went horribly wrong. The ancient door mechanism jammed. Eleanor was trapped. For 3 days, the school searched. They could hear her screams at first, echoing through the walls. By the time they finally broke through the sealed passage, the horror they found. Well, let's just say Eleanor had grown desperate enough to try anything to escape, even using her own fingers to claw at the walls until there was nothing left but bone. Now, the girls of Ravenswood tell a different story. They speak of cold spots in the hallways, of shadows that move against the airflow, and most terrifyingly, of knocking. 3 slow, deliberate knocks that come from inside the walls. Sometimes they say you might hear a voice, a friend calling your name, begging to be let in. But here's the warning that every Ravenswood student learns on their first night. No matter how familiar the voice sounds, no matter how desperate the pleas become, never, ever answer those knocks. Because what's left of Eleanor has learned to mimic the voices of the living, and she's still looking for company in those dark passages where she spent her final hours. They say her spirit still roams the ventilation system, her hollow eyes peering through the grates, her bone-scraped fingers testing every door, every wall, searching for another soul to join her in her eternal imprisonment. So, if you ever find yourself at Ravenswood Academy after dark, and you hear those 3 slow knocks, remember Eleanor and keep your door locked tight. Some say the knocking is just the old building settling, pipes expanding and contracting in the night. But ask any Ravenswood girl who's heard those 3 deliberate knocks, who's seen those hollow eyes staring from the darkness, and they'll tell you Eleanor is still there, still waiting, still hungry for company in her endless maze of shadows.
Picture, if you will, an old Soviet-era school building on the outskirts of a small town. Its walls are stained with decades of neglect, and the hallways echo with footsteps that seem to linger just a moment too long. I've heard whispers about this place, stories that make even the bravest souls shudder. Every October, when the autumn wind howls through the building's crumbling corridors, something peculiar happens. A single piece of chalk appears on the teacher's desk in room 217. But this isn't your ordinary classroom chalk. No, this one is different. Local historians eventually uncovered the truth behind these horrifying events. During World War II, a strict disciplinarian taught at the school, Miss Irina Petrova. She was known for her harsh methods, particularly her favorite punishment, locking disobedient children in the basement during air raids. But one night in 1943, something went terribly wrong. The bombs fell closer than expected, and the children, well, they never made it out. They say if you press your ear against the basement door on quiet October nights, you can still hear them. Their final moments spent in darkness, whispering her name over and over. Miss Petrova. Miss Petrova. The chalk, they say, is her eternal tool of torment, forcing new generations to acknowledge those she left behind. To this day, no one dares to remove the chalk when it appears. They simply wait for November to arrive, when it vanishes as mysteriously as it came. But the real question remains, whose names are these? Are they the souls of those forgotten children? Or perhaps future victims, waiting their turn to be silenced by the whispering chalk? Remember, if you ever find yourself in that old Soviet school during October and you see a piece of blood-red chalk on the teacher's desk, don't touch it. Some stories are better left unwritten,